Welcome everyone, Christine here to talk about the launch of World of Warcraft Burning Crusade Classic, for which we have finally gotten a release date, though it was leaked, probably deliberately, by Blizzard just recently. So June 1st is when Burning Crusade Classic is going to come out, along with a May 18th pre-patch. Now, we've heard about these dates for a while, especially the pre-patch date is something that we had heard for quite a bit right now. So we finally have confirmation that that is when Burning Crusade is going to come out. But on top of that, on top of these dates, we've also gotten information about the digital Deluxe edition, which we know Blizzard was going to do. 2 mounts, one of them you can also use in Shadowlands. On top of that, in the digital Deluxe, you get a character boost, a specific Hearthstone, a toy, all that stuff. And the boosted character will start up with weapon skills to 58, give you flight paths, level 58 green quality gear, runecloth bags, and a bit of gold. It does seem like the boosted characters are going to be the same ones as in the beta, which is going to be a problem since those had pretty bad gear. Maybe they do improve the gear in some way. Crucially, the boost is not available on Blood Elves or Draenei. So if you're going to play a Blood Elf Paladin or a Draenei Shaman, you have to start from scratch. There's a bit of a mixed bag with regards to that, but I'll get into that in just a bit. And then on top of that, if you want to clone your character to keep it on a Classic Forever realm, it will cost you $35. That is ridiculous. Some of these price points are, quite frankly, ridiculous. And finally, they also said that Arena Season 1 is going to come out a couple of weeks after Burning Crusade launch, though they didn't give a firm date on that. And of course, they've made a bunch of PvP changes. How do I feel about all of this, about this info dump, which was only a days off from what some people had heard? Like, some people knew this kind of information dump was going to come out at about this point. They had heard about it for a while now, and they were only off by, 1-2 days, basically. How do I feel about this? Well, I think from Blizzard's perspective, they had a bunch of pretty bad decisions to make when it came to launching Burning Crusade Classic. So they can launch it now with this kind of short pre-patch, which is going to cause all kinds of issues. And it's also right at the beginning of summer, which is going to have its own issues. It's going to affect the community in a very negative way. You're going to see a lot of guilds collapse over the summer, because that's always something that happens. You know, Burning Crusade will launch June 1st. You're going to have people play it, like early June, no problem. But then you get in July, you get in August. There's going to be enormous issues for a very large number of guilds. And on top of that, the fact that they released this kind of information, that they gave us this release date at this time, without too much advance warning, is going to cause enormous issues in its own right. Like, for my guild, we had a bunch of people lined up, but because we didn't have any firm dates, right? All we could do was speculate. The problem is, because they just threw it out there with, less than 2 weeks before the pre-patch, a lot of people are going to have issues just being able to get the time. Like, a lot of people that have taken vacations off. You can't just change your vacation time whenever the hell you want, right? You have to give advance notice. You have to plan for that, all that kind of stuff. People have exams. People have work. It's going to be a problem for a lot of guilds. So in my case, we've lost several people already, or several people are going to struggle. And you can imagine that kind of situation will be happening in guilds across the board. So from this perspective, releasing it right now is going to cause enormous issues. But at the same time, why would Blizzard do it from the company's perspective? Well, the reason they would do it, one, it has to do with the business situation. We all know very well that Blizzard's financial situation, that their current player base for World of Warcraft is heavily declining. Classic is done. People are quitting every single day, and basically the only kind of real raiding that's happening for the most part is either farm runs by guilds or gold DKP runs. That's pretty much what's happening in Classic. People are quitting every day. The more they would have dragged this on, the worse it would have gotten. And then you have Shadowlands, which is practically finishes an expansion the way I see it at this moment. Sure, they have 9.1. They've started the hype machine with 9.1, but there's a lot of lost interest in Shadowlands, regardless of what they do now. I think that Blizzard had an opportunity with Shadowlands, and look, it's not a bad expansion, for the record. It's not a bad experience overall, but it's practically finished the way I see it. Like, so Shadowlands is losing players, Classic is losing players. They have to release something. They can't wait with that. And then you have the financial quarter situation, right? They probably want to finish Q2, which finishes, with June? They want to finish the second quarter this year with in a positive state. Because if they had waited and they had to launch Burning Crusade, they would have been in a rough state. So that's their view, I imagine. That's one of the overriding concerns. Regardless of how much it's going to hurt the community, regardless of how bad things are going to get from that perspective, that's their concern. Now, I think that's very much embracing a short-term benefit at the cost of a long-term benefit. I think the overall player base of World of Warcraft in Burning Crusade Classic is going to be worse off, far worse off, because of what they're planning to do. Now, yes, some people will argue, well, they would have lost a lot of people in Classic if they had launched it in the middle, at the end of summer, like in August, as some of us had suggested. They would have lost a lot of people between now and then. But I think it would have been a better thing to do that than to just release it right now. Especially releasing it with so very little notice. So in a way, they've rushed it. Why did they rush it, you might ask? Well, the way I'm looking at the situation, the reason I think that they rushed it comes down to the fact that it's been a complicated situation to actually make Burning Crusade Classic. We know the pandemic has hurt game development in a major way. And I don't think a lot of people who haven't followed game developers or talked to them or understand it can really comprehend why that is. One of the big reasons is game developers that in gaming industry is so used to having people work for very long hours at an office, being very efficient with that. The crunch is a thing. When you change that and have people work from home, there is a great deal of productivity lost. And that's exactly what happened. And there are plenty of complications happening across multiple industries, not just the gaming industry. It's not like they're a special case, but it certainly has affected the gaming industry in a far worse way than many other industries. So that's a complicating factor. But I also feel when it comes to the release date, if they had released it during the middle of summer, it would have been a shit show. If they had waited until the end of summer, well, obviously they wouldn't have had the good financials to report for the end of their quarter. They would have lost a lot of players in the meantime. So there's pros and cons to each approach, right? I think middle of summer would have been a worse approach. There were many people who were telling me, oh, they're going to go with middle of July. I think that would have been an absolutely terrible decision. To be clear, that's the worst decision they could have made by any stretch of the imagination. But releasing it right now, well, anyone who's played the beta for a good length of time can tell you this. There's many bugs and glitches and issues that exist right now in the beta. Sure, it may seem very playable right now, but there's issues with hunter pets, there's issues with virtually every class in the game, and it's not like, the dungeons, the raiding content is perfect. There's still things that they need to tune. There's still things that they might need to change. There's still things that they should fix. But the real issue is that there's plenty of class problems which are going to affect the pre-patch. Let's just say, for hunters especially, and warlocks, if they want to use pets, if they want to go demonology, which apparently is the highest DPS spec for warlocks in the early phase of Burning Crusade, you can forget about playing a demonology warlock concerning the situation with pets. And as for hunters, well, pets are a fucking nightmare right now. So that's one issue. There's issues with blessings for paladins. There was a very long issue that they only just fixed, where protection paladins or paladins would not gain mana back through spiritual attunement from healing over time. And people will say, well, they probably have an older version on the beta than what their current version is. They probably have more recent versions with a bunch of fixes. But here's the thing. Every patch that they've introduced in the beta so far has fixed some things, and they fixed more than they've broken, but they've also broken some things that weren't broken before, and that's the problem. I feel like It's not ready for launch. It's going to launch in a buggy state. It's going to have an enormous negative impact on the community. Not as much as a middle of the summer release would have had. And because they're launching without much warning, it's really screwing over the schedules of a lot of people. It's messing around with many guilds, with their plans, on every level, not just the top-of-the-line hardcore guilds. So you can imagine they're going to be affected in a very bad way. But also middle-of-road guilds or casual guilds. I mean, consider this from a casual guild perspective. Forget hardcore guilds, but consider this from a casual raiding guild perspective. If you're on the Horde side, you're going to struggle getting paladins. If you're on the Alliance side, you're going to struggle getting shamans. I mean, it's not going to be impossible, obviously, to level from 1 to 60 in 2 weeks, and even gear if you're a hardcore player. But for casual players, absolutely. So from a casual perspective, it's a question: can I get to 60? On my Blood Elf Paladin or my Drain Knight Shaman in that 2-week pre-patch. From the hardcore raider perspective, from the hardcore player perspective, those of us who are going to play those long hours, our concern is, well, I can level up, but can I get the gear I want to be able to level my guild? Even if my guild helps me, because my guild, for instance, will help me. I'm sure other guilds will help their shamans or their paladins, respectively, because they need them. But what's going to happen on a more casual level is you're going to see a massive shortage of shamans on the line side. You're going to see a massive shortage of paladins on the horde side. And that's because they decided to put this release date, have a short pre-patch, don't give people enough time to set everything up. Didn't give people enough warning so they can plan their vacations, plan their schedule around this. So those are all going to be major problems that the community are going to be dealing with. Now, the reason I think they did this with so little warning comes back to the issue of development. Like, they've had many issues developing Burning Crusade Classic. We can clearly see that based on the state of the beta, the bugs, the glitches. But they obviously wanted to get it before the end of this fiscal quarter. So you have all of these issues coming together. And I feel like, yes, Burning Crusade is going to be fun. Yes, there's going to be a lot of people playing it. Yes, a lot of people will express interest. A lot of people are going to watch it on Twitch, on YouTube. They're going to get a lot of money from it. But the long-term consequences are really going to hurt Classic Burning Crusade. I mean, it's probably not going to be the same situation as with Classic right now with Vanilla, but it's still not going to be great. And you're going to see guilds struggle. You're going to see players struggle with those classes, finding those classes, and it's going to create a far greater faction imbalance than it should have been. I mean, a longer pre-patch would have resulted in more shamans, would have resulted in more paladins, and the shaman situation is far more important than the paladin situation on the horde side, because you don't need that many paladins on the horde side, but you do need that many shamans. Every Kara group ideally wants to go with 2. You only need 1 paladin for Kara. Every 25-man raiding team needs 5, and you need them in the actual raid. Maybe you need the paladins as well in the actual raid, but you can make do with 2 paladins in a 25-man raid. You won't get those for free blessings, but you can make do with 2 paladins. You ideally want 5, maybe even 6 shamans per 25-man raid. Now, maybe you're thinking, oh, we only have Gruul and Mag for 25-man raiding. It's not going to be that big of a deal. Except Magfaradon is actually a pretty challenging boss on which even the top guilds in the world right now in Classic wipe their asses off to. Do you imagine that the more casual player base, the middle-of-the-road player base, do you think they're going to have an easy time with that? And it's just going to accentuate plenty of issues that would have existed regardless. Like, faction imbalance would have been an issue regardless. The shaman situation would have been an issue regardless. But it's going to make these issues far, far worse. So, yay, we get Burning Crusade, and yay, we finally get the release date. But the way they handled it was really bad. Extremely bad. The way I see it. And it's just because, to be fair, on some level, it's not their fault because, the pandemic, it's not their fault the way that's affected the gaming industry. But I feel that Blizzard could have made a bunch of better decisions. And at the core of it, I feel like what's really driving their decision is just trying to make their situation look better than it actually is before the end of this fiscal quarter. But doing that, and this is the problem, for them on a business standpoint. And you always got to understand, Blizzard is business. Their job is to make money, to turn a profit. That's their job. We can talk about how we feel about that from a consumer standpoint. But even from that perspective, all they're achieving, all they're managing to do with this push is just a short-term benefit with long-term negative, extremely negative consequences. That's how I feel about it. Christine here, signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications. And stay tuned for more, everyone, because there is plenty more coming. Guides, discussions coming out on Burning Crusade.